Welcome to Pure Nonfiction, the podcast interviewing documentary filmmakers. I'm Tom Powers, the documentary programmer for the Toronto International Film Festival and artistic director of Doc NYC. On this episode, I talk to Errol Morris and Elsa Dorfman. She's the subject of his new film, The B-Side. This is Errol's 11th feature documentary. His career was launched in 1978 with Gates of Heaven, about a California pet cemetery. In that film, he broke away from the dominant convention of fly-on-the-wall observation and instead interviewed subjects speaking directly to camera.
God is supposed to know when the sparrow falls, when the lilies of the field bloom. So surely at the gates of heaven, an all-compassionate God or an all-compassionate supreme being is surely not going to say, well, you're walking in on 2 legs. You can go in. You're walking in on 4 legs. We can't take you. I don't believe this will happen.
10 years later, Errol had a breakthrough with The Thin Blue Line that got an innocent man off of death row and set the standard for true crime in documentary. More recently, his films have been occupied with crimes on a larger scale. The Fog of War examined America in Vietnam through interviews with Defense Secretary Robert McNamara. The Unknown Known focused on George W. Bush's wars by profiling Donald Rumsfeld. In between, Errol made a more comedic documentary titled Tabloid, revisiting a lurid story that occupied the press in the 1970s.
Kinky sex, religion, a beauty queen, Mormon missionaries, kidnapped at gunpoint. There was something in that story for everyone. It was a perfect tabloid story.
The B-Side feels unique to Errol's work in that it's the celebration of an artist. Elsa Dorfman is a portrait photographer in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her camera is a rarity. There are only 6 in existence. It was created by Polaroid to take pictures in the large format of 20 by 24 inches, almost the size of a movie poster. Like consumer Polaroids, her pictures develop instantly. Normally for a client, she'll take 2. The client picks their favorite, and she keeps the other one, that she calls the B-side. Now that Polaroid film is discontinued and Elsa is 80 years old, she's mostly retired. In Errol's film, she looks back over hundreds of photos and reflects on her career.
That people have said, oh, her work is too sunny. The explanation is, in my life, I've worked hard not to be down. Life when you're down is hard enough. You don't need to walk around with a picture of it.
Elsa never had much of a national profile, but in Cambridge, she's an institution. Errol moved there 27 years ago with his wife Julia and their son Hamilton. He told me,
the way I describe Cambridge is a city filled with very, very smart people, none of whom have any desire to talk to you.
But Errol and Julia became friends with Elsa and her husband Harvey Silverglate, an attorney in criminal defense and civil liberties. Elsa says about Harvey,
so the only people he will have supper with are Julia and Errol, because he'd rather work.
We're lucky.
He's very eccentric.
As an aside, I should note that one of Harvey's defense clients is Jeffrey MacDonald, the infamous surgeon convicted of killing his family. His case was re-examined in a book by Errol called A Wilderness of Error. As our conversation began, Errol gave credit to Julia for bringing the couples together.
I think it's a result of my wife. I mean, they all, I might add, including myself, love Julia.
Everybody loves Julia.
And I wouldn't know either Elsa or Harvey if not for her. I always complain that if I were to kill my wife, if I were to kill Julia, I would have the worst public defender in the state of Massachusetts. But if she were to kill me, she would have the best legal defense team in America.
In Harvey.
Harvey and others.
So in all the time of knowing Elsa, did it ever occur to you to make a film about her before?
I think about making films all the time, and the number of films I think about making versus the number of films that I actually do make. I'm a fan. I've been a fan for as long as I can remember, probably for as long as I've known Elsa.
Since you got that picture, it was really amazing.
Well, let me burrow into that for a second. What is it about Elsa's work that attracts you?
The simplest way to describe it is kindred spirit. The element of self-presentation. When I think about Gates of Heaven, in the context of Elsa's work, it seems like we're plowing the same field. In that movie, it's people presenting themselves to camera. And it is a weird partnership between the camera, the filmmaker, and the person being filmed. That's definitely present in Elsa's work. And of course, I'm not just aware of Elsa's work as a Polaroid photograph hanging on a wall. My family have had, I don't know how many Elsa photographs, but
I wonder how many, 25?
I think it's even higher than that, Elsa.
I think Julie once counted.
It's a good number, and you have to add to it not just Polaroid photographs of our family, Polaroid photographs of the dogs, Polaroid photographs of my mother and stepfather, Polaroid photographs of Hamilton and his friends.
Which are very funny. You know, 6th grade, 5th grade.
They're amazing.
Now it would be
Amazing.
very funny to look at.
And last but not least, Polaroid photographs of two of my favorite subjects, Donald Rumsfeld and Robert S. McNamara.
You photographed them.
Yeah.
The cover of The Fog of War is Elsa's photograph of Robert McNamara.
Taken in your Cambridge studio?
Right. 3 shots. So there are 2 B-sides for that picture, I think. Either 2 or 1. I can't remember if I only took 2 shots or 3
It was
shots.
McNamara. He probably was really impatient.
Oh, he was really impatient, and he had the most immaculate Burberry raincoat with not a wrinkle on it. It must have been, ironed every day by a butler.
And how about Rumsfeld? Do you have memories of that?
Yeah, because they were very chummy. They sent me a thank you note that I have hanging in my bathroom at home.
Here's Rumsfeld being interviewed in The Unknown Known.
Well, we know that in every war there are things that evolve that hadn't been planned for or fully anticipated, and that things occur which shouldn't occur.
Errol, I think when a lot of people think about your career, they think first about your portraits of morally challenged men like Donald Rumsfeld or Robert McNamara or Mr. Death. Not to say that you haven't covered other terrain, but those are the ones that seem to stand out the most. And I wonder if you think of the B-side as being a change from that kind of film.
Well, I don't see my work as just work about the morally challenged. I think it's quite diverse. At least I like to think it's quite diverse. My wife made a comparison between the B-side and Fast Cheap very early on.
Yeah.
That there was an elegiac tone to the film.
In his 1997 film, Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, Errol interweaves the stories of 4 eccentric specialists in the fields of topiary, mole rats, lion taming, and this robot inventor.
Some people really believe that we are going to replace ourselves by building these machines, and carbon-based life is on the way out, and the silicon-based life will be what emerges and is the next step, if you want to make things sequential, in evolution. That may be. There may not be a place for humans in the future if we're really successful at building these systems. They may, in fact, be our legacy to the future.
If Fast, Cheap seems, in the end, to be about the disappearance of everything, a film ultimately about mortality. It's no accident that the movie was made just after my stepfather and my mother died. Yeah, I don't even know how people interpret the B-side. I've read now enough reviews to get some sort of idea of how it's being received. I have trouble, in truth. Sometimes it's described as Errol Morris Light, L-I-T-E, and it's hard for me to see a movie that is so much about loss, death, mortality in general. I suppose you could appendage L-I-T-E to it, but I don't quite see it that way. I think in many ways it's one of the richest things that I've done. It may not be the longest, but I think there are a lot of really, really rich themes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's all kinds of reasons we could speculate or unpack for why people view it that way. Maybe because it's not about war or politics.
Well, there's some people that responded to it overwhelmingly, very, very early on, for which I'm grateful. Yourself being one of them, I might add.
Errol shared the B-side with me last summer, and I invited it to the Toronto Film Festival. Like most people outside Cambridge, I'd never heard of Elsa Dorfman, so the film came as a revelation. Here's a clip in which she describes her struggle to obtain one of Polaroid's few 20 by 24 cameras.
And you had to be in a circle. It was really hard to break the line of their pets. Really, because I was never a pet. And I just hung in there. I always was charged for every roll of film. I never got a free box of film. I never got a free SX70. I never got anything. But anyhow, I can't complain because I ended up with a camera, but that was from being a nag.
Elsa, when Errol undertook this project, did you have any apprehensions about it?
No, I didn't. I took it as a hoot. I didn't take it seriously. I thought, oh, I'll humor Errol.
It's nice to know.
I thought, I'll humor Errol, and I'll do the best. And no, I did. I went there, and I'll do the best job I can. I was very serious about that, and I won't play any games, and I'll be very honest, and I'll do it for Errol and Julia. But there was the element of I'll humor Errol along.
We really didn't know.
Because it was only going to be about 10 minutes. So it isn't like I was intimidated. I didn't take it seriously. So
I'm curious, now that the film is finished, you know, this is a presentation of your life, and there are choices that are made to fit that life into 70 plus minutes.
Right.
I'm interested to know, when you sit and watch it, if there are things that are surprising to you, things that stand out to you, and what Errol chose to focus on and what was left out?
One thing that surprises me in all the reviews so far, since I've read as many as I can find, is that people say she picked up a camera when she was old. Old? I was 27. Did they refer to men as old at 27? I don't think so. I mean, so that Errol didn't do that, but the people that are writing about it say she came to photography late in life. Late in life, as if my fertile years were over. I mean, 27.
You never thought of it that way.
I never thought of that, and I still don't. And if there were one thing I'd have a campaign, it would be 27 is not old. If you haven't decided to be a doctor at 27, you still can go to medical school. You can get your PhD. You can win many prizes in physics, But I don't know who was the first person to hitch on to that as an example of an older woman. At 27, that's like a girl. And you just wouldn't do it when talking about a man. You'd say he's at the start of his career, he's an intern, he was an intern, now he's graduated,
Errol, how old were you when you took up filmmaking?
Yeah.
Well, I started my first film when I was about 27.
Old. We're old. We're what do you call it when you're old and we're late blossomers?
When you published a book in 1974 called Elsa's House Book, a woman's photo journal,
right.
And I'm curious about the word woman in that title, why you were using that.
Only a man would wonder. I'm speechless. Because a woman's experience and a man's experience are totally different. And when you're a girl, you quickly learn that you have to think on your feet because you don't have many chances. And I mean, it's so different being a girl from being a boy. It's terrifying, actually. I think it's just as hard to bring up a boy as it is to bring up a girl, but it sure is hard to bring up a girl. Even a girl born, like I have a 6-year-old granddaughter. And you can see how I can see as a photographer, how her smile is all about pleasing. She's a pleaser, whereas I, even at 5, was a snarler. Like, I'm not going to do that. Have some water. I don't want any water. If I want it, I'll get it. So I was that at 5. And,
I asked Errol how the film got started.
I had spent an afternoon with Elsa in the garage, and Elsa was taking...
Without a camera.
Without a camera,
just killing time. Like, say you came by.
Elsa, me, and the flat files. And she would take out 20 by 24s, and then she would tell a story about the people in the photograph. And I did think at that time, this is a movie. I mean, that certainly occurred to me. And then I kept not putting it off, but not doing it. It was never on a list of things that I was going to do, except that over the years, more so than ever, I've come to believe that I should stop thinking about making movies and just make them. So when Elsa started pulling Polaroids out of the flat files, I remember this very well, she held up one of them. She held it in such a way as to sort of block out almost everything, except you could see the top of her head, or her hands holding the edges of the photograph. And I thought, is this so good? And I can't even see Elsa. And then I thought, yes, this is really, really good. She's kind of obliterated in some way. Not obliterated, but supplanted.
It's what you do when you take the picture off. See, it's almost like half of that black screen. And so you're holding it for the person to see it. And so for me, this is it's
very literal, hearing the artist behind the work.
Yes, and it's very familiar.
It's a good way to
I've done it
describe
hundreds of times, and so I don't do it without even thinking, oh, this will be good. This is how I do it.
In the film, Elsa talks about her parents, who passed away many years ago.
My father tried to escape from the nursing home. He got as far as the bus stop. He had the sense to wait for a bus. And they sent his favorite nurse out to talk him into coming back into the building. I thought it was a sign of my father's well-being that he wanted to escape and he could carry it off. But I was the only one.
I do like that very, very much. I find it very moving. There is Elsa with a photograph of her parents taken just before they died, and they're holding a picture of them as a much younger couple.
I think they were my age now because it was their 50th anniversary. So they were probably 80.
I like those moments. I sometimes think there are no good movies, but there are good moments in movies. And I'll stand up for that one.
One thing that the movie is able to do that you couldn't necessarily do being inside the studio is to deliver lots of images in a compressed amount of time and juxtapose these images, and which perhaps you could do if you had a very big, large book of the photographs. But the film does it,
which we're thinking of doing.
Yeah. The film does it in its own interesting way. Was that striking to see these decades of work flying by in the film?
It was like psychoanalysis. The whole experience was like psychoanalysis. Because I had decided, that I wasn't going to be, oh, this happened, or, all the different ways you see people in this kind of, in work about themselves. And I was just going to be absolutely straight. And we went into the garage and we went into the basement and we found boxes that had survived floods and stuff. If you live in a place for 40 years, and I didn't say, oh no, you can't have that, or you can't do this, or oh no, and it was like it
so
was
some of this
really
excavation you were doing because of the film.
All of it I was doing.
You were looking at things that you wouldn't have been prompted to otherwise.
Never. My son would have when I was dead. No, I would never. Maybe, right? Maybe he'd go, oh, what's this videotape? Yeah, right. Right. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Allen Ginsberg had died, about 20 years ago. We had never, or certainly since the week he died, played the tape that he sent us when he was calling his friends goodbye. We had never played it in memory. And we didn't even know where it was, and so we did this. I said, "Oh, really, if I can find it." And we did this major search of our house. Not that we have a big house, but we have a messy house. And my friend found it just lying around, and it's fabulous. And I didn't say, "Oh, that's too personal. I can't," or oh, theatrical. Oh, I can't stand it. it's, Errol's material. I sort of had that feeling about it, that I was going to do this as straight, as unfiltered as possible.
So what was that experience like for you to excavate all these things, each
I'm
one
saying
of
it was
which...
like psychoanalysis. Not that it made me a better person, but, it was like psychoanalysis.
But it didn't cost you money.
It didn't cost me money. I didn't have to be there at 8 o'clock every day, right?
We haven't sent Elsa a bill yet.
But it was. I felt very naked, but it was what I had decided.
Now, one thing that comes up in the film is the fact that the very materials that you've been using for decades went out of circulation as Polaroid went out of business, and it forced you into a kind of retirement. Do you feel like it's a retirement? Or I know that you continue to take photographs, but I'm curious to understand someone who's had this as a passion for so many years, and then you reach a point where you start to wind it down.
It's very weird because I'm still alive. So you know what I mean?
Very much so.
No, I mean it's very weird, and it's for that you almost need psychoanalysis because it's very profound, and I can only tell you that I think about it every day because I have my studio, I have the camera, I'm trying to have film all the time. I'm really not that strong for camera, and the camera, of course, now is almost 40 years old, and it's, creaky, and, you have to, nothing works as smoothly as it did before. So so if people really... Now I think if people attract me, whereas before if somebody called, I did it. I didn't say, are your kids brats?
Now that's a question.
Now I try to find the answer without coming right out.
Errol, given that you've been photographed by Elsa over many years and been photographed by other people,
like everybody,
I'm curious what your relationship to portraiture is, and particularly having your own portrait taken.
One thing that has become clearer to me as a result of making this film, it might not have been clear beforehand, is the real difference between Polaroid photography and brand X, if you like, everything else. And in particular, the experience of having your photograph taken by Elsa, which is its own really unique experience. And it's participatory.
Can you describe that more?
Yeah, I can. You go down. Elsa's studio is in the basement of this office building on Mass Ave in Cambridge.
It's sort of like this room in a way. No windows.
It's subterranean.
Yeah.
Except we're up somewhere.
Yeah, but here we could be under, too. You don't have a feeling that you're on, the 5th floor or something?
If you go down in the elevator, there are Elsa Polaroids on the walls. You go into this room, the room with the camera, and
furniture.
There's this worry.
Furniture.
At least I experience it as a worry. Will the picture be any good? Not because of Elsa, but because of me.
Well, and because of this is a particular kind of photography, we're going to take 2 shots. You're not going to get 30 shots.
It's become very popular now. Diane Arbus would be a good example. Books are published where you get to see Diane Arbus's contact sheets. So if it's the boy holding the grenade in the park, you get to see that photograph, and then you get to see the contact sheets from which that photograph was selected. And when Elsa tells you in the movie that photography is a lie, something, by the way, which I agree with, I hate to slavishly agree with you, but yes, I slavishly agree with you. You look at these contact sheets and you realize how different all of those photographs are, how really different they are. And there are no contact sheets here. There's 1, 2, 3 photographs, and you don't know how to prepare yourself for them. In fact, there really, properly speaking, is no way to prepare yourself for them. You don't know when Elsa's going to take the photograph. That's very much similar to my experiences with Avedon. Avedon engages you in a conversation, and then unexpectedly the picture is taken. Elsa, it's about a relationship thing. You're talking to Elsa, you're relating to Elsa, Elsa's talking to you, Elsa's relating to you, and then you may even do something that I do. Someone told me that in an interview, I always start the interview saying, I have no idea what to ask you. Mm-hmm. Which is usually true.
Right.
More or less true. I don't know how to start this interview. I don't know what to say, really. Maybe it's a nervous habit. But yeah, in the middle of everything, the picture gets taken, and it's almost always a surprise. You don't know when it's going to happen.
It's funny because, see, for me, it's not a surprise because it's a minute that I'm waiting for. Because, like, say, for example, there's an awkward 11-year-old. I'm sort of waiting for that kid to pull themselves together.
Like a bird of prey.
You know, and then, because I don't want them to look, in the picture. But I'm not going to say, pulling your tongue,
So there's not a part of this process where you say, okay, smile, everybody.
So he's waiting for one thing, and I'm waiting for another.
I have no idea what she's waiting for.
And with a dog, I think everybody realizes that I'm waiting for the dog's tongue or tail or, without even saying, oh, let's see what happened. You know what I mean? I think there's a certain group cooperation at a certain point. If there's a child or a dog, and there are more than 4 people, then you can sort of count on group cooperation.
And then comes the group experience. The pulling the photograph down, cutting it, hanging it up on the wall.
See, so that's where this part comes from.
And then watching together, usually with Elsa or sometimes I'm too scared, I'm apprehensive about looking at the photograph that is emerging. It is something so very, very, very different because you're all there together.
Watching it emerge out of the Polaroid.
So you can't say you're an asshole.
Yeah. And then Elsa would talk about people being disappointed. Now, this is something that I've experienced. I hate to even say it.
No, this is really true, and I don't know how you. I know it. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead because you go ahead because it's you.
No, the experience of being disappointed with your photograph, and you think, oh, that's not so good. And Elsa, I remember Elsa telling me this very, very, very early on. Wait 10 years and look at it again. And of course, I've had that experience. I've had the experience of waiting 10 years. I've had the experience of waiting 20 years and looking at it again. And God, am I so grateful that she took these photographs. I've come to really love them. Isn't really enough I've come to really, truly value them. When I look at these photographs that Elsa took of my mother and stepfather, perhaps it's because they're so big.
They're so vivid.
They're so vivid. There's the memory of when these photographs were taken. When Elsa says it brings back the dead, that photograph only really takes on a true meaning after the subjects are no longer here. She's right.
I want to thank Errol Morris and Elsa Dorfman for speaking with me. The B-side is now playing in theaters, released by Neon. Pure Nonfiction is distributed by the TIFF Podcast Network. We're mostly taking a break this summer, but we may drop an occasional episode. We'll return with a regular schedule in September. Thanks to our team, series producer Sarah Modo, sound mixer Tom Micah, web designer Cross Strategy, social media master Jordan Smith, and executive producer Raphael Nahausen. I'm Tom Powers. You can follow me on Twitter at THOMPowers. You can read our show notes, learn about live events, and sign up for our newsletter at purenonfiction.net.